Hey, this is Jonathan with the Strategic Multifamily Investing Podcast, and today I have with me Karissa. So, first of all, in the way of introduction, I'll let her give her accolades and her bio, things of that sort. But she and I met, I don't know how many years ago now it's been. A mutual acquaintance of ours asked me to kind of help join because he couldn't, because he had to deal with some things in family, with the DC Housing Providers Association. It is I got that right? It's the only organization that is actually endorsed by the DC Housing Authority that represents the landlords for Washington, DC. And so I was fortunate and blessed to be the treasurer for 1 year and still work with them a little ways afterwards in giving some advice. So thank you so much for joining us, Karissa. Karissa served at that time as president. Are you president again this time?
I am. Thank you so much for having me here, Jonathan. It has been, at least 5-6 years, maybe?
Don't tell nobody.
It's been a while. But again, I'm excited to be here. I am Karissa Span, the landlord and tenant coach, and I am still currently serving as the chair for the DC Housing Providers Association. And you're right, Jonathan, that is the only organization in Washington, DC that is endorsed by the District of Columbia Housing Authority. I have actually served on the board for quite some time now. Years.
Yeah. The board of the Housing Providers Association, and you've been doing some great work, and you've held some things together. I know when I was working with you, we were talking about doing a website, and you all actually have now a website that's up and going. So that's good. I know it's been a challenging road. So I wanted to talk to you because of a couple of things. Right now, as we're filming this, we're in the midst of the COVID-19 situation. And so there are a lot of landlords, multifamily landlords or single family landlords that you've dealt with and that are your clients right now. And I think that you mentioned that you might have some tips and tricks to really help them during this time. Again, the landlords. Could you talk to us about that?
I do. And yes, I have, Jonathan, prepared some tips on helping landlords to manage rental property during this pandemic. So this, I believe, will help landlords pretty much everywhere. Okay. But tips on managing rentals during a pandemic is very simple. And although it seems, I think there's a lot of, because of the uncertainty, that there's a lot of anxiety over what should I do? How should I handle managing my rental property? So tip number one is that you want to always maintain an open line of communication with your renters. So maybe that could be by phone or text messaging or emails. If you're on social media, you want to engage your renters and your tenants. And I believe that when you maintain that open line of communication, Jonathan, that minimizes a lot of anxiety because, a lot of investors and owners and property managers, we're concerned. But a lot of these tenants and renters and families, they're also concerned. So maintaining that open line of communication, it helps on both ends.
So let me ask a couple of questions. When you talk about open line of communication, I just want to get a little bit specific because for some people, they may not be social media savvy or they may not be necessarily be tech savvy to even text. But if they are, or they're interested in doing that, are you talking about having a social media account for, the property that they have, or is it that they're using their personal account, or are they supposed to use their personal account to set up a Facebook, say, fan page or business page, or how do they do that with social media if I'm a small time person and, don't have pretty much a large holding?
And that's a great question. It could be all of the above, or I have some clients of mine, they've opened up social media pages maybe on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but it's specifically for the rental property business. I have other clients, they invite their residents to follow them on their personal pages. So it just depends on their level of comfort. If you don't want all of your tenants or your renters in your personal business, then by all means, I do recommend at least opening up social media pages just for the tenants to follow you, because that keeps engagement going. You can post things on, things that family can do, like family time,
Right.
and just be really creative and have
That's
fun
good.
without letting a lot of people in on your business.
I'm going to be nitpicky a little bit here. So for a lot of investors, say for single family home investing or even multifamily investing, they may have a LLC for each one of the investments that they have rather than having multiple ones. So are they going to create multiple pages, or are they just going to create one page maybe and then invite, say, tenants from all of those different places to that one page?
I would strongly recommend that they look at the information that they're putting out, create one page specifically for all of the renters to follow,
Got
not
it.
for each individual LLC, because that can be cumbersome and, you know, impose upon their time to, stay up to date with information that they're putting out. And you don't want to get lost. You don't want to become overwhelmed in the process.
Right.
But I would strongly recommend just one page.
So in terms of, thank you very much for that. So in terms of phone and text, I get the phone part. So hopefully that tenants or landlords have a phone number that's not their cell phone number, right? But that may be their business phone number. Is there a particular service provider that you would suggest that they use for getting, say, another phone number, or getting a phone number that can allow them to text or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And not that I'm endorsing it, but I do use Google Voice.
Okay.
It's a free number.
Amen.
My
Amen.
tenants.
Okay, so we had some technical difficulties there, but you mentioned using Google Voice, and I personally agree with using Google Voice as well to as a free line to be able to communicate. I'm sorry, you were saying something else about Google Voice.
Google Voice, I love it. When the calls come in, when the texts come in, it is on a designated number. So when I see the notification on my phone, I know that it's a tenant trying to contact me. It shows up on my cell phone just as any other text messages or telephone calls would show up and come in. So that is a great tool and advice. I strongly recommend it, and it is absolutely free. Free 99.
Got it. Free 90. And if I can add on to that a little bit more, if you don't have a Google Voice number already, and you don't already have an email account that's specifically set aside, just like you would the social media account, what you may want to do is create a brand new Google email address that's specifically for your business, and then get the Google Voice number based on that particular email address, and then use that same Google email address for all the other social media accounts that you have. Again, free 99. This is all, but that way everything is there, so that if you have people who are texting, all of that goes into the Google Voice number that's associated with your email. Any emails that come in all go there, and that helps you when you're ready to actually scale, right? So you can have your entire team log into that particular email, and you may have your team to install Google Voice on their cell phones as well, so that when that Google Voice number rings, it's not just ringing to one person. It may be other people that you have on your team that are also able to see the text messages and the phone calls and be able to answer those things as well. Just something, again, we want to provide as much value as we can out there to people, especially for those that are, not as technically savvy or may not have a huge portfolio, but it's something for them to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, but that's great. So number
No,
one,
those are great tips. Thank you so much for that.
no worries. Keeping open line of communication. We talked about how to have family time. What other type of messaging do you want to maybe put out there, and how often should they probably put that communication out there?
So what I do is I maintain communication at least once a week to all of my residents.
Got it.
Once a week. So in addition to the phone, in addition to text messaging, maybe send a newsletter or just some sort of letter, a memo or something. Maybe, you don't want to be involved. You don't want to receive the text messages. You don't want to be on social media. At least send something in writing so that you're.
So once a week, you're going to be sending out, recordings, or you may send out an actual newsletter, right? Is
That's
there
correct.
a particular tool or technology that you use for that, sending out that newsletter?
I use Word document, just Word format. I'll just type up something to say, hey, I'll give a tip of the week. I may include a quick quote or recipe, but also in that letter for those residents that I do have who are on social media, I give them information on where they can follow me online. But certainly that communication is helpful. It has my email address. It has the best contact number for them to reach me, because I still want to know what's going on. I still need to be aware of any issues that's going on at the property, any maintenance, repairs, or emergencies. And so it's going to be critical to maintain an open line of communication, letting the residents know, listen, I know that we're facing this pandemic, but please still let me know if there are any maintenance, repairs, or emergencies that need to be taken care of.
Got it. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I had not thought about this prematurely, but if anybody needs help with any of this technology stuff, feel free to reach out to me. Let me give you my personal business email address. It's jm@redbootllc.com, or you can contact Karissa, because she's in the DC area, and she is like consistent. Again, we service pretty much everywhere, but she knows the area very well, and I'm pretty sure that if you get with her and her business, she can definitely help you out with these things as well. But again, go to Karissa first, because I know she may have the bandwidth to be able to help with these things and putting these processes in place. So what about PPE and food service types things? Are those type of communications that you have as well, like where people can get to food banks and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I do share links. We have nonprofit entities, we have churches in the community. And so that is the sort of information that I'm giving my residents. I have one group of residents I manage. It's approximately 157 doors in that community. And so every week we are delivering baskets and bags of food and meals to these families. So I just want to make sure that all of my residents are up to date on resources that, again, Jonathan, as you've already indicated, I am in the Washington, D.C. area. So I provide resources on where the tenants can go, not just for food, but other resources, maybe for rental payment or utilities. And so it's always good to do a little research to help guide the tenants on where they can go to get resources, because at the end of the day, it's only going to help what we do as housing providers.
Exactly. If I could add on another technology tool that's coming to mind as we're having this conversation is MailChimp. MailChimp will allow you to be able to send out an electronic newsletter, but I also believe that they have the option now to be able to print that newsletter and be able to send that. So you could kill two birds with one stone if you're using that technology. Again, if you're using that same tip that we mentioned before by having that new Google email address, you can then use that Google email address to sign up for MailChimp. MailChimp is free, I think up till about 2,000 or so users. So if you have, you're under 2,000 or so doors, there you go. There's a way of being able to keep in contact with those that are your tenants or even potential tenants, maybe a marketing tool, because, they can get the information as well. Maybe they did not qualify in months past, but now you're giving them information, even though they're not with you right now. That may engender them to you in the future as another marketing tip, because you're able to, provide that information and you care. So I'm sorry, didn't mean it. It just, as you're talking, things are popping up in my mind, and this is great. So keep an open line of communication is number one. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that one? Because I think you had two more tips.
No, that was it for maintaining an open line of communication.
Got it. So the second tip is?
The second tip is to define emergency services and repairs. Okay, so we want to make sure that everyone is safe. If you have not already identified what maintenance repairs you're going to take care of, I strongly recommend that you define what services.
Go ahead.
All right. So for instance, I had a tenant who called. She said, my screen fell out the window. I've already defined the list of maintenance services that we are providing. We are only going in or sending contractors in for emergency repairs. For instance, leaky faucets, okay, a running toilet. That may not seem like an emergency, but if you're paying the water bill, that is an emergency. If both or the only toilet is stopped up, that is an emergency service. If the garbage disposal isn't working or the sink is backing up, no electric. If you're responsible for maintaining utilities, those are examples of what some emergency services are. And so you define that and you let the residents know during this time, we're only coming out for this reason.
Right.
Anything outside of that, do not put yourself in harm's way. Don't put the residents in harm's way.
Got it. And so when your emergency crew is going out there, are they suited up in PPE?
They are suited. They have a mask. As a matter of fact, my residents, they are already aware that they must maintain a 6 feet distance. If they are required to come out of the home, we'll let them know, listen, when the contractors or the maintenance guys come in, you will have to step out for them to go in to make the repairs.
Got it. That's awesome. So identify emergency repairs. And so you've defined what those are and you've communicated that to your tenants because you have an open line of communication that's out there. Cool. So those emergency repairs, generally, when there are repairs that are out there, I know in some contexts they have to pay a deductible of sorts if it happens to be, their fault that say the toilet was stopped up or something like that. Are you waiving that during this time, or how are you guys handling that? Or is that on a case-by-case basis?
That is on a case-by-case basis because here's why. Everybody's not impacted financially during this pandemic. You still have some residents, their finances have not been impacted. They're still coming in with whatever their income source is. You have some tenants that can still pay. And so according to the terms of the lease, okay, so if the tenant must pay a deductible, you let them know. But still be open. If you want to waive the fees, then certainly that's, advisable. But if you're in a position you can't waive the fees because you have bills to pay on the property, on the rental. Listen, it's a business, right? So one of the things that I do recommend is allow the residents to maybe pay the fees later. Allow them to, maybe sign a repayment agreement to say, hey, listen, I know that I need to make this deductible of, for instance, $250. I don't have it today, but I will pay it, or, just give them a time frame that they can pay it.
So then that brings up another question, and I know we got one more tip that you're going to give, but within the collections, I know you have multiple tenants. You have, several hundred doors that you're managing probably at this point in time. How have the collections been, over the last couple of months? I know that, we have an unprecedented number of people who have filed unemployment. Somewhere, I think the latest figure I heard is like 30 million or so by the time of this recording. How are your collections on your, and again, I know that it's, property by property, but generally, are you collecting like you were collecting, say, back in January, February?
No, there is a difference. So it tapered off. So at the end of March, we were prepared knowing that, okay, families are going to be impacted. So April was really great. It was really strong. So May hit and we saw a slight decline. So here's what we did. We knew that we were going into this with so many unknown variables and uncertainties. And so we told tenants, listen, if you can't pay your rent, let us know. And so that goes back to that open line of communication. We need to know what's happening. We are checking accounts daily. We are posting payments to tenant rent accounts daily. So we know day by day what's come in, what we've collected.
So what kind of dip? Were you at 100% of what you were collecting before? Are you at 85%? Or are you 60% of what you were collecting before? Just on an average, just
right now we're averaging about 78%. So that's a dip. That's a dip.
That's a dip.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but yeah, we're impacted by them. I know a lot of my colleagues are also impacted. A lot of investors, they're really feeling it. They're really feeling it hard. But there are places that are able to assist tenants. So especially in Washington, D.C., I'm giving all of my tenants this information. I want them to have all of the resources that I come into knowledge of and I know about, because I want them to get the help that they need. Because when the courts open back up, which they currently are starting to reopen,
Yeah.
the caseload is going to be massive. So I want to make sure that if we can prevent from having to go to court, we can do that by getting them financial resources while they are available. But if not, then we already know what we have to do.
So I know that some people are really concerned about, divulging all their personal information. So when you're having a conversation with them to say whether or not they've been impacted by the COVID-19 situation, whether that's through unemployment or other circumstances, what kinds of questions are you asking them to identify themselves?
Again, just to let us know if they are out of work, if their finances have decreased during this COVID-19 period.
Are
And
you
then
asking them to prove that, like giving you some sort of a pink slip of sorts? Or, are you just allowing them to verbally just give you that information and you taking it at face value?
what I have done is ask them to email it. So, for instance, some of my residents have applied for unemployment.
Got
So
it.
they've sent the documentation to say, hey, Karissa, I've applied for unemployment, or I've applied, I haven't received it yet. I've had some tenants that follow up to say, well, hey, listen, I just want to make sure that you are aware that I received an increase in my finances through TANF, which is a welfare program. So that communication has really been helpful. It has helped me to know, okay, well, they are at least trying versus not paying rent, not communicating. You don't know what's going on,
Mhm.
so I want to know how to best, help these families, because although it's a business, I treat it like a business, but I also have a heart for the residents that I serve.
That's the
Um,
key. Yeah, go ahead.
and then along those lines also is finding out if you don't already have emergency contact for these residents and families. This
Good,
is a great time to collect that information.
good. That's good. So, right, because, and I know you and I have had an offline conversation prior to this one. A lot of people have been impacted, especially in the Washington, D.C. area. I think in Prince George's County, which, jokingly, some people say is Ward 9, because there are only 8 wards in Washington, D.C. proper. But right outside of Washington, D.C. is Prince George's County. And I think in Maryland, it is the hardest county that's been hit. And I think you and I both have had, a couple of deaths, several deaths that have occurred. And when someone is on, maybe identified as COVID positive and may have to be placed in the hospital, a lot of times no one is able to go and see these other individuals or see these people. And then some, in some extreme cases, they pass away. And in that case, you need to know from a landlord perspective, who's the next of kin, who's the next person that can potentially handle the business for that particular unit. So making sure that you update that emergency contact information is really, really critical. It's good. That's a good point. Very good point. Anything else with number 2, which is identifying or defining emergency service and repairs?
Nope, that's it. Just making sure that they're defined and that the services are actually being completed.
And then number 3, what you got?
Number 3 is just making sure that if you have not already provided an online platform for you to receive your tenant rent payments, definitely do that. Make it as convenient and easy as possible to collect that money.
Now, what platform are you currently using, or you recommend your clients to use to do that?
Okay, so we use Rent Cafe. So I have quite a few communities that I manage, but we use Rent Cafe for one community that I manage. I also allow some of my tenants to use Cash App. They can pay by way of PayPal. They can pay by way of credit card.
Yeah.
They can pay by way of Zelle.
Yes.
Look into, you don't
Yeah.
have to pay for subscribe to these larger services, but look at what is available and free. But again, you want to make it easy for them to get you that money.
Absolutely. And I highly recommend Zelle. The last place that I rented, it was a condo. I was in a condo for about a year or so. I didn't send them a check. I just went to Zelle every payday and sent them what they needed, and they loved it. It was fast. It was easy. It was on time and was up to date. So I would recommend all landlords get if you will, all of these things that we mentioned that are non-subscription based. I know Rent Cafe is a platform that would allow that to happen, but what you may want to do is get a Cash App, again, to go to your operating account or to the account that you accept rent in, get one for Zelle, get one for Venmo, and get one for PayPal. So that's 4. Cash App, Zelle, Venmo, and PayPal, at least those 4, and put it on the, what's that thing called? The signature line of your email, right? Especially if you're creating a new email that we talked about earlier, put them all there, put them on your newsletters, put them everywhere. That way people know that they can get in contact with you or make payments that way. And then you can, especially if you're a smaller operator, be able to collect money that way. I know some even larger operators. I happened to be on Venmo the other day and I saw somebody else I know who has multifamily, pretty big multifamily. And I saw that people were sending her payments through Venmo. So again, do these things. Again, free 99. Free 99 for all 4. And yes, making it simpler as possible. I still have family that like to write checks and like to go get in the car and pay their bills, go to the, all the different companies. I told them, I said, look, you can't do that anymore. You can't drive down to TJ Maxx and make a payment. You have to go online. And so from a landlord perspective, I think this is a great thing. Is anything else with this third one in terms of creating that platform?
No, that's it. You touched on quite a few.
Good. So now there are a couple other questions that I had for you. Because you're in the Washington, D.C. area, I know from a multifamily point of view, there are a lot of people who don't want to go to D.C. because of the laws. And you know exactly which laws I'm talking about. And given that you're so close to the DC Housing Authority and, of course, serve on the board for the Housing Providers Association, people are scared to go because of the tenant laws. So for those who may not know, in the Washington, D.C. area, there have been a lot of stories on both sides of what has happened. In the past, there have been those who have been in Washington, D.C. for a very long time, have owned their home, and for various reasons were late on paying taxes, or the taxes may have escalated because of some of the new development. And so therefore they were unable to pay those taxes. And so the property showed up in a tax sale, and an investor went in and bought it for a couple $1,000s, and the house was worth maybe $500,000 because of all of the new developments. And so there was, an effort to make sure that that kind of thing didn't happen, especially for the aging population. And so there was a body of laws that were put together. Am I getting this right here? Am I getting this right?
Yes.
Okay. Make sure I'm getting it right. Body of laws that were put in place to ensure that those that are aging in place, those who have property that, are generations within, the Washington, D.C. area, keep their property. And so as a result, these laws have prevented, some development that has gone on, and it makes it a little bit more hard, makes it harder for developers to move forward with things. And so you had kind of a rebuttal to my comment about, hey, stay away from DC. And so let's have this conversation. What are your thoughts? What should investors do? Should they go into DC again and try to do some things, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I think from a larger scale of investing, I think that they should, first of all, look at what is the goal? What is the ultimate goal? Because I have investors, they come in, they're like, Karissa, I'm not planning to have a lot of time in DC investment. I'm not trying to manage property for an extended period of time, So that's one thing. But for the landlords who are definitely, or investors who are looking to do long-term rentals in DC, the one thing that I strongly recommend, and this is always my initial response, know what the law says. Because Jonathan, you hit the nail on the head by saying, the laws in DC, they are in favor of the tenant. They are pro-tenant. which means that it makes it challenging for investors and landlords if you have issues with tenants. But in that, you have to know, you have to have a system in place. If you're going to manage property in DC, know the law, have a system in place. If you're getting new or potential tenants coming in, knowing how to screen these applicants, because when they get in, that could be a potential tenant for life.
Yeah.
All right.
Literally.
Yeah, definitely. Because
literally, I want to make sure everybody understands that. Literally.
Because it's easy to get a tenant in DC, but it's hard as heck to get them out.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stuck with a tenant from hell. And trust me, I've had quite a few of those. It's no fun. It costs me a lot of sleep. It costs a lot of money trying to get them out. So knowing the law, screening the tenant.
What is the name of the law so that when people are going to go and look them up, they can make sure that they know what they are? What's the name of the set of laws we're talking about?
Well, there are quite a few.
Okay.
So be knowledgeable with the District Department of Community and Housing Development. Okay. All right. So that's DHCD. Check out their website, and we can maybe give it later. I'm sorry, I don't have that information available right now.
We can put a link to this in the yeah.
Absolutely. So DHCD, the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, that's DCRA. You have the Office of Tenant Advocacy, OTA. You want to check out all of those websites.
So then, okay. So then all of those websites to see what the laws are, because with DCRA, I think in order for you to be able to rent a property, you need to be able to have a license, right?
You have to have a basic business license to rent.
You got to have a basic business license to rent in DC. So you got to go to DCRA. And I cannot remember the name right now. Okay, so it's TOPA, if I'm not mistaken, right? The TOPA laws are really, 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 really important to know, because those are the ones that for some investors who are wanting to sell the property, they have to grant the tenant a certain amount of time and first right of refusal to be able to purchase that particular property, even if you believe the tenant can't purchase the property. Yeah. So it kind of goes down a rabbit hole there. So you need to get with Karissa. That's what we're trying to say. I'm serious. So I mean, to be able to do, at least some of the background checks that you need to know, right, for the tenant. And I don't know if you want to give some of your secret sauce here, but what are some of the things that you may be looking for, in a tenant? Say I have a house and I'm trying to renovate it and I want to get a tenant in, and I know that I'm going to be in for a long-term rental. This is not going to be a 2-year, 3-year game. It's really going to be almost for life, right? How do I ensure that I have the right type of tenant in this place?
First of all, by doing a full background check, which consists of income, employment, credit, criminal. All of those things are important. I do not ignore red flags.
Okay. And what are red flags? What are red flags from your perspective? Because I know every organization is different in terms of property managers, what they think are red flags.
So to define maybe a credit score. So what are you looking for? On average, people look at 650 as an average credit score. So they don't want tenants who have a credit score that's less than 650. Certainly you can raise the bar or you can lower it, but definitely have a standard. Having a standard will save you a lot of time and money.
So there is another form that I think I can provide people, and I may put it as a part of this podcast as well, that will help you as a property management company, that lists maybe a half a dozen key things that you want to be able to look for. Right. So yes, defining the credit score, right? We don't want to violate, fair housing laws at all.
Fair housing laws, that's really big.
We don't want to do that. But there are things that we can specify, like 3 times worth income or more.
Absolutely.
Okay? And so if you don't have that, No narcotics convictions within the last 24 months.
Absolutely.
You may want to make sure that you have a pet fee. I know some municipalities have a pet fee and some of them have like a pet deposit. I believe in those sort of situations, you have to return the pet deposit versus a pet fee you can keep. Some people also allow for pet rent. Some people I know also do interviews with the pet because all pets are not necessarily created equal. Some people say that pets will tear up your house. How do you know a pet will tear up your house? You never really can tell. But some people do pet interviews. There's a couple more things about smoking and things of that sort that once you have, had some conversation with you and your partners about, renting this property out, you can ink them, if you will, in this rental or it's kind of a portfolio or picture of your ideal tenant, an avatar, if you will. And if you were to give this to, say, Karissa and say, hey, I want to be able to rent to someone, but I want to make sure that this person meets these minimum, guidelines and specifications. It's very easy if Karissa were to go and rent your property because she could say, look, here's the application. You're welcome to apply. Oh, by the way, here are some of the things that we're going to be looking for. So then the person, the tenant, the prospective tenant can self-select whether or not they meet that criteria or not. And again, you're not violating, fair housing laws or anything. You're providing the information and letting them know what your criteria is up front. That way it's transparent and everybody understands what it is that you're getting into as you're going through this process. So I'm going to see if I can dig that out and put that together and share that with you all as well. So again, something else we just want to do to add value. So I'm making that note right now to do that. Is there anything else that someone would need to know if they're interested in working in DC? I mean, is it a good idea to go into DC from a multifamily perspective or single family rentals?
DC is expensive. DC is expensive. DC is pro-tenant. So look at your pros, look at your cons. The biggest thing for me, like I said, is just getting the right tenant. Because if you're going into DC or you're going into a market such as DC that's pro-tenant, you're not knowledgeable, you're trying to do it yourself, you can get yourself in a lot of red tape because of what you don't know, and it would not end up good. I've had clients, Jonathan, that have, they've been in court for months with tenants. They thought they were doing the right thing, purchasing property, they have the money, the resources, and it just did not go well. It did not go well, and it cost them a lot of money because what you don't know can and will hurt you. It will cost you.
Got it. So bottom line, get in contact with Karissa. Again, she's the current president, and has been for a while in leadership for the DC Housing Providers Association. Again, the only association in Washington, DC that advocates for landlords and endorsed by the Housing Authority. She understands all these laws that she's talking about. How would one get in contact with you if they're interested in retaining your services or just, you helping them out with some of this technology stuff that we talked about? How do they get in contact with you?
I can be reached by email at karissaspan@gmail.com. So that's karissaspan@gmail.com. My website, simplekarissaspan.com. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn as well as Twitter, Karissa Span.
Excellent. Well, listen, I thank you so much for this time. My sister, you provided, I think, some good value here. I think that there are a lot of people who will reach out to you. Again, thank you for all the work that you're having also with the landlord community in Washington, D.C. If you are a landlord that's running into these issues, please reach out to Karissa as well. I know that she'll be able to help you out and at least direct you to some additional resources. With that, thank you so much for joining us, and check back with us for some more interesting content. Thanks, Karissa.
Thank you, Jonathan.